Arrow Season 5, Episode 6, So It Begins. Now, this episode really surprised me because as I was going through it, we have this character. Honestly, I had a couple of theories as I was going through. I was like, we finally get our Prometheus episode. They've done their thing where church is no longer a factor in any way, shape, or form unless he gets resurrected. So he's gone, and we're moving on to the character that's going to be like the main villain for the rest of the season. And so as it's going through, I'm like, okay, I kind of like this character. It's, of course, another Archer, which they're kind of doing the Flash thing. Like, Flash gets a bunch of speedster villains. Arrow seems to constantly get a bunch of Archer villains. But, we're going through it, and as it was happening, I'm like, okay, so first off, the first insane thing that happened is this character knows that Oliver has this list. And so there's a big thing with that where I'm curious. I was like, okay, is this because Prometheus always knew that? Or is this because Prometheus realized, oh, it's Oliver Queen, let me do some research, and this is the stuff that happened with their father, or, with his father, and this is kind of the backstory of what was happening within the city during that time. Or maybe there's something else going on. Like, there's another huge factor where, it's kind of like, even before knowing the name, it was just like, they already knew who Oliver was, and that just happened to be something where it's like, oh, I already knew that part about Oliver Queen, but it didn't really matter. And now that I have whatever this weird thing is towards, attacking the Green Arrow, now I can utilize that and kind of combine the two. So it was hard to say. I was like, I don't know if this person knew who Oliver was beforehand, or if they just did a bunch of research after finding out who Oliver was, and that's how they got the names. But the way they're playing it actually seems really cool, because I don't know what the deal is with this character. They did kind of the thing where, like, when they were on the train, that I think was just meant to be action-based, but I kind of wish they didn't do it that way, because it's like, you can't do something like that in a superhero show, because I'm going to assume that person has powers when the lights go out and they're on a speeding train, and then the person just shows up. So I'm going to go with they have powers, at least in some regard, but I would assume not, because it was supposed to be like the crazy cool thing where they just showed up, but it's like they're on a moving train in the subway. That's not how that works. You'd have to have superpowers for that to happen. So I assume it was just meant to be a cool scene, but I was kind of mad because I'm like, I'm sure this doesn't mean that they actually have powers, but who knows? We'll see. Hopefully they actually utilize it and it wasn't just meant to be a cool scene that logistically makes zero sense whatsoever. So that's my hope, is that somehow Prometheus actually has powers. Honestly, for a split second during that scene when Evelyn was facing Prometheus, I was so sure we were about to see that Prometheus was actually a couple of different people. Because when they had Oliver and he was getting called by Felicity, it was like, Evelyn turned her comms off. He was like, alright, well, I'm going to go and try to help her out. I thought for sure another Prometheus was going to show up, and it would be like, she must be fine because I'm dealing with Prometheus right now. And sadly that didn't happen, because that would have been really cool. We would have had like another crazy organization thing going on, which would have fit fairly well with this episode, and Oliver now having like his brand new team and stuff like that. So a lot of ideas as to who Prometheus is, but as far as the biggest lead, or supposed lead, I guess, is of course the ending of this episode where we have Lance. And he wakes up and he has this random cut on his arm, which happened to be where Oliver shot the arrow. Although it seemed like it was a really big cut, because, the arrows are like this big at the widest, or maybe like that. But it looked like an actual just cut, down his arm completely. But he has this cut, and he wakes up. And I thought it was interesting the way they ended it, too, because someone was clearly, knocking on his door, and that's what woke him up. So that, I assume that's where we're going to start in the next episode. But he wakes up and he has this cut, and then he's holding, or at least he sees one of the blades on the table. So now there's this whole idea that Lance is maybe not just drinking, but maybe something's happening to him. Because of course he seemed really confused. He kind of got up and he was kind of looking like, what in the world happened here? Like, how does this happen? And, how do I have one of these throwing stars? So, or daggers. They kept calling them throwing stars, but when I saw it, I'm like, that's not a ninja star, that's just a dagger. But when they have that scene at the end, it's like, okay, there are a million questions now, because it's either like a split personality thing, which never seemed to be a part of his character, or there is something crazy going on where it is something, either magical based or just superpower based. So I'm not really sure what to expect, in all honesty, with the way they did that cliffhanger. I loved it because I thought it was a really cool thing, because I wasn't expecting that at all. I was just like, man, they're making Lance, the drunk character again, which is really sad, but still very entertaining. And then it goes to like this crazy thing I wasn't even expecting, where I guess he's Prometheus, or they're at least hinting at it. And like I said, it could be normal, but I'm assuming he's not choosing to do it, especially with the insanely confused look he had when he's like, "Oh, how'd I get cut?" And he has the star. So I don't know. It's hard to say what's going on there. Plus, there were a couple of other things that I noticed that I thought were really weird, and it might involve either superpowers or someone temporarily giving him abilities, which I highly doubt this, but they. I don't think so, but it could be a slight possibility that there's a somewhat of a crossover happening right now with Flash and Arrow, based on what they're doing with the Flash. So that could be a possibility. I hadn't considered that even when I saw the ending, but maybe they're doing a slight crossover because of all the Flashpoint stuff that happened. So I don't know. It's really hard to say. It's hard to say what's happening, but there's some stuff I noticed, like outside of the seemingly, teleporting onto the train. There was also the part where Evelyn, shot him at the front, and the arrow just bounced off, and I was like, that could be Kevlar, which I would assume it was, because even if you have superpowers, it won't affect your clothing. But I thought that was weird, because I'm like, even Kevlar, it should at least stick in. It kind of just was like, and it just bounced off, like it just had a little nub of an arrow on it, and it just hit and bounced off. So I was like, that seemed a little weird to me. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, something's going on there. I don't know if this has anything to do with the Flash stuff that's happening with their villain, but it seems like a certain possibility. I don't know, the stuff with the character, like with Prometheus being wounded, maybe that has something to do with it, because they kind of introduced the idea of split personalities as well in the Flash with one of the earlier villains, where it was a normal person, but the other side of them was the villain side. So maybe that's what they're doing with this, and it's kind of blending certain things together. I'm trying not to spoil Flash, just in case you guys might not be caught up on that, but it's been the whole season, so if you watch it at all, you kind of know, but just in case, I don't want to spoil it. But I don't know, they might be having a bit of a crossover, and that this may have been our first, really big clue that somehow Lance is also Prometheus. So I'm looking forward to actually getting a solid answer on that, which should be pretty cool. But another huge thing in this episode is that Felicity actually tells her boyfriend that she's working with the Green Arrow, and he was super cool about it. He was just like, he was like kind of mad, and then he was like, but you're doing it for a good cause. And that was pretty much it. And I'm like, I think he's dead. He's probably dying. He's way too comfortable and nice with what's supposed to be a big deal. And it's just like, no, you're doing a good job, though. So I once he said that and he was super nice about it, I'm like, he's probably going to die. I don't think he's going to make it. So that's unfortunate. I could be wrong, but it's just like, in all of TV, whenever someone learns a secret, especially when it's like just the random new love interest that no one really cares about, and then they're also super cool about stuff, it's like, oh man, you're actually kind of nice. I don't know if you're going to live too long. So we'll have to see what happens with his character. But she tells him the truth about that. Of course, this kind of revolves around Oliver not telling the rest of the team the truth about, the killer going after him and kind of taunting him and things like that. And they're just going back and forth with the team dynamic stuff. And I'm kind of just ready for it to just be good at this point, because there always seems to be something, and it's at this point it's just going back and forth. It's like, it started off, it was really good because it's like, all right, it's two components to them not wanting, you're not really making the team element work. It's Oliver wanting to have a team but not trusting them because he actually doesn't want to get hurt, which is actually a really cool concept. And then the other side of it was really mostly Renee and him kind of doing the wild card thing and disobeying orders and stuff like that, which in one regard, kind of came from Oliver not trusting the team still, which was like the second part of that, where he still didn't trust them, so Renee still did the wild card thing. And then it seemed like everything was working, and then we get this episode again where he once again doesn't really trust them, and it was a little different, and I felt it would have worked fine, but he did the real Oliver thing where he was like, he just didn't tell them, and he gave the worst explanation, and I felt like that could have been what made it less generic, because when they confronted him like, hey, this is the first time we're even hearing about this stuff, and it's like, it's, you know, kind of the original team where it's Oliver, Diggle, and Felicity, so the two of them know, Felicity and Diggle, and then the rest of the team is kind of left out. So when they confront Oliver, he's just like, yeah, I kept it from you, and then he kind of walked away, and I was like, he didn't even remotely mention like, hey, I was worried for your safety. This person is insanely powerful. They're killing random people. This, like he did in the very beginning of the episode, it was like, I didn't want them there because it was a trap. But he didn't say any of that. He was just like, yeah, I didn't. And he just walked off. And I'm like, that just makes it repeat, like, over and over again. And I'm like, he could have easily just have said, the reason I didn't tell you is because I was worried that, you know, like the first mission, it was a trap. After that, we just didn't know who the heck we were dealing with. I didn't truly know what was happening until just now. Like, that was really it. It was like, hey, killer on the loose, didn't say anything because didn't know how powerful this person was or what the deal with them was, considering they killed a person that was coming after me so that they could kill me. Like, that's a crazy thing. You should go in there, you know, on your own first if, you know, you don't want your team to get killed. But instead, he's just like, I just didn't tell you. And he walks away and was just like, that's so stupid. But they do have some good moments in there, though, after they do the confrontation and stuff, and Oliver and Diggle have a conversation, and Diggle tells him, you know, you weren't really, you definitely aren't the same person that you used to be, which I thought was cool when he mentioned the fact that everyone was so shocked should kind of prove that he's a different person than he used to be. And I was like, that's actually really cool, because I never considered that. And they finally touched on it in this episode because I kept bringing it up. But Oliver flat out talked about how after he killed Damien Dark, he kind of went back to killing people. And Diggle mentions, like, you know, you do it now, but it's as a last resort instead of a first resort, because that was like his whole goal in the beginning, was just kill a bunch of people. They also had a really cool moment where when they first talked about the book, and Oliver was like, you know, I haven't even looked at that thing for 4 years. And Curtis was like, oh, I thought that was a different person, because they never knew that Oliver was all three of those people. So I thought that was actually awesome. They were like, no, you know, Felicity was just like, no, the Hood, the Arrow, and the Green Arrow have actually all been Oliver the whole time. And I thought that was actually a cool moment, because I never even considered that. They didn't, you know, why would they have any reason to talk about the fact that that was him the whole time? You know, I probably wouldn't, I don't know, it's hard to say, because they went through the whole thing, of course, you know, where Oliver was saved, because it's like, well, you're actually the Green Arrow, so Roy had to take over for him, or he decided to, at least, to be like, hey, I don't, you know, you're actually the Green Arrow, you're better at this than me, so I gotta take your place. So, you know, I guess there wouldn't be a reason to question it. Everyone thought that it was Roy once he decided to take over, so it was just kind of cool. It was like a little thing, but I was like, that's actually interesting. They never talked about that. And it's like, no, actually, he was, all three of those people, it was always Oliver the whole time. He just kind of had to play that story so that he could stay as that person. And, you know, everyone thinks it's a different person. I thought that was pretty cool. I don't know. I feel like if I was in that situation, I would have been a little suspicious. I'm like, I don't know if that's really a different person. Like, now you want to come and be a hero? Like, would have always been two people, but that's just me. I would have been, always would have been super suspicious. But I thought that was a cool little moment, and, you know, them talking about, you know, with Oliver and Diggle, him talking about how Oliver changed over time, and, you know, like I said, everybody being shocked actually proves that he changed from who he used to be. So they definitely had some cool moments in there, and the team eventually does just, you know, they rally behind him anyway. And Evelyn has a pretty important moment, because she talks to him about how he stopped her from being a killer and stuff like that. So she was really upset with him, where, you know, that's the way that he started. So I thought they had a pretty good moment, and ultimately they come together again as a team. So that's what, you know, like I said, in ways it's repetitive. Like, it leads to some good stuff, but then there are other parts where it's like, it could have only started repetitive, and then, like, the other 98% could have been really, really good. But they just leave certain stuff in there. Like, Oliver, and I guess that's his character. I guess that's a part of it being good, but at the same time, it's what makes it more repetitive, is him not changing fast enough, I guess. Like, him not explaining everything. Like, he'll explain it to Felicity and Diggle when they confront him about it, and then when the rest of the team is there, he just gives the first half of the answer, and then he's like, I'm kind of mad now, and that's when he leaves. And it's like, he could have explained that whole situation away and just said exactly what he said the first time, And it may not have been perfect, but it would have been at least a bit more reasonable than, yeah, I didn't. And then he just goes off. So, there's stuff like that where it's like, I hope that they just flat out change that sooner rather than later. We'll just, have to wait and see. But I really did enjoy this episode. That was really good. We got the cool little action sequence where those random guys were just freaking out because they thought they saw Prometheus. They're just shooting in the freaking sky, causing mass panic. So I like that scene. We got to see the whole team working together. I never really wanted it actually, but I always thought it was kind of cool. But he did the zipline thing in this episode, and they actually show him shoot it, and that when he shoots it, it basically shoots backwards at the same time. And I was like, that's cool, because we never see that. We always just see he just zip lines. Like, suddenly it's there, and then poof, he zip lines. But they actually showed it in this one, and I was like, that's really cool. So I like that. Everyone has their own little hooks, I guess, for the zip line, because we get to see, like, 3 people come down. So they're just, saving people and stopping all the shooters and stuff, because they're freaking out. Just, I guess, shooting at nothingness, but at the same time, that's one of the things that kind of makes me wonder, like, was he there? Like, he clearly wasn't after a while, but is there some element to that? Like, crazy power-based element? I don't really know, but I like that scene. It was cool to see, just all of them working together. It was also kind of funny at some parts, like, I think it was Diggle, like, he saved some random person, and so somebody was running towards this crowd. It was like him and like 3 other people helped this person that fell, that couldn't walk anymore. So they were lifting them up, and someone was running towards them, and Diggle did like a football block where he like pushed the guy like out of the way. He didn't fall over, but he pushed him really hard when he ran towards him. I just thought that looked funny. And then they had people just running and tripping over stuff. Like the guy fell into the table and like flipped an umbrella in the air. And it was just funny how that looked. Some of that stuff was just funny to me. And then they had the first kill in this episode when Prometheus randomly showed up, which is another thing which made me think, that could easily, because, they do that with Oliver where he just shows up because he's breaking in houses. But it's like, I don't know, that seems like some teleportation type stuff. So, I don't know, it seems like they're dropping hints. So that's what I'm hoping. Like I said, the scene, I hope it was a hint and not just, this looks cool, but it makes no sense because we're on a moving train. So I'm hoping it really was teleportation. But the scene where the first woman gets killed, the way they did it, because I never talked about this before, but I noticed these shots because they do it very often. And I think I really noticed it this time because it wasn't during an actual action sequence. But they always have these moments where they have the camera really low to the ground on like a dolly on a moving track, and they have someone fall towards the camera and they just pull the camera back really fast. They do that a lot in this show, and I think I finally noticed it because it was a random scene. It wasn't an action sequence. It was just this lady just, she's freaking out. So she falls backwards, she like knocks the table down, she flips the chair, the little elephant flies up and stuff, and it just looks super funny. I was like, that's like their action camera, movement, but they used it for this lady just like falling backwards, and it made me laugh so much because I was like, they use that shot all the time, and it just finally dawned on me seeing it outside of, the action sequences, and I was like, that's actually funny because I've seen them do that a million times that I can think of. So thought that was just kind of funny. The ending of the episode when they get out of the train, we get to see the parachute again, which was really cool. That completely defied physics because they wouldn't have made it off. That would have killed them if they like went up and that train was moving that fast. So that didn't make any sense because I'm like, if the parachute went up, if they went up, which they would have gone up really fast because they would have caught the wind going who knows how freaking fast, like almost 100 miles per hour. So, of course, they would have like shot straight through that hole, but it wouldn't have been a perfect shot up. Like, they would have been caught, and they basically, the way it would have worked is they would have swung towards the roof, like their faces would have flipped forward, like going upwards towards the ceiling, and they either would have died because they would have got like their heads chopped off by the giant, all that, bent up metal, or the wire would have just been cut on the parachute and they would have just fell on their backs and then they would have died on that train because the way they did that completely defied physics. But a lot of random stuff in this episode. So, just wanted to randomly mention that because I was like, that's not physics. There's no way in the world that they would have flown up faster than the train was going forward. Like, it could have been even, which, like I said, they would have been hit. But there's no way they would have flown up faster than the train was moving forward, past that hole, where it was, because obviously it's a parachute. It's meant to stop you in a certain location. So it's basically the wire stays here and the train's still going like this. It would have just snapped that thing, which, like I said, either would have trapped them in the bus or in the train, or it would have caught them right at the end and it would have hurt them somehow. But it's a comic book show. It's a TV show in general. They do all sorts of stuff that makes no sense. But I like this episode. My main gripe was definitely the fact that as much as I love the team dynamic stuff, and they still managed to have cool stuff because it's still issues, with the team. It seems to just be on a generic level. It's just like, once again, it's either Oliver doesn't trust the team, which is what happened, or the team doesn't trust Oliver, which is exactly what happened. So it was both again, but it's like now we've had each of those in separate episodes, and we've also had Oliver not trusting them and them not trusting Oliver in another episode. So it's like we got that exact sort of storyline. It's just a different sequence and a different event. So it's like there's still some cool stuff in there as to why they don't trust him and why he doesn't trust them, and it's more of a security thing. But then they do stuff like him not telling them anything, which seems like, oh, I don't trust you guys. And then they go back to feeling that way, and they even have the line in there, like, how are we supposed to trust him if he doesn't trust us by telling us anything? So it just went, it's still good, but it seems like they're just constantly going back and forth. Oliver doesn't trust them, and now they don't trust Oliver. And then it's solved at the end of the episode. So they've done that, like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 episodes in a row, it feels like now. So hopefully we're done with that, because that just seems, the elements in there are cool, but the overarching thing is kind of getting annoying. It's just back and forth. No trust here, no trust there, and then trust at the end and we're all happy. And then it'll go back to being another secret that was kept, and then no more trust. So it's starting to get a little annoying. If they do it kind of like with Renee, I'll be fine with that, where it's individual characters do stuff and it's not just the whole team versus Oliver again. That'll be fine, because it'll be like this person. They kind of did it with Evelyn, but she was just legitimately mad. It wasn't like she screwed up, so Oliver didn't, Oliver benched the whole team because of her like he did with Renee. That was a little different. It was just, whole team was mad, and they had their little conversation. But still enjoyed the episode. Excited to see what in the world is happening with Lance. He's been super sad and depressing and drunk, and now he might be a super villain. So who knows what's happening. But I did enjoy this episode. Want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And of course, I want to know all your predictions on the Lance thing, how you feel about it. Is it going to somehow be a crossover if you watch The Flash? Seems like it makes a lot of sense to me that it could be. Seems like he has superpowers with that whole possibly teleporting stuff. But I want to know what you guys think about that, what you thought about the episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.